Hello and welcome to Points of View. Choosing a point of view can have a dramatic effect on how your story is received by the readers. The narrative voice is the portal to the world you're creating. It's important to get the right one so we can have the right effect. You have to decide how you want us to see what the message you're getting through in your text. It reacts and interacts with everything that's going on with the story. We can get the personal responses of your main character, or we can get a omniscient outlook on how it affects different people. The right choice of point of view can decide whether the reader trusts or distrusts who's telling them the story. It can alter perspectives on different characters and different situations, and we can see how different people react to those things. There are 3 points of view you can choose from: first person, second person, and third person. Now, I have a bigger video all on the different 5 aspects of narrative. Voice is just one of them, so if you want to know what the other 4 are, I will link that in the description below. Also, I will leave a link to my website, which has physical written versions of all my videos on there as blog posts, so if you prefer to read and take notes, then you can do that there. Also, there's a lot of extra content on there that I don't necessarily put on this channel, so if you're interested in writing and books, extra stuff goes on there, so heatherlowry.com. Within first person, there is single viewpoint and multiple viewpoint. Now, with single viewpoint, that is one character. So your Katniss Everdeen in Hunger Games, we see everything through her point of view, nobody else's. Also, Bridget Jones. Won't be a video on this channel if I don't mention Bridget Jones. I love Bridget Jones. So the pros of single viewpoint narrative is that we get that instant connection with that one character. We root for them, we love them. Our journey is their journey. We are together in this. We get to see the inner workings of their mind, how they personally feel and react to certain situations. We get that intimacy that we don't get from being a distant narrator. We see a zoomed in version of a larger scale event. With something like the Hunger Games, we get to see how governmental control impacts on the individual. Statistics are easy to look at and go, oh yes, that mega amount of people was injured in that attack. But if we zoom in on the people, we build that emotional connection, and that makes it more real, more pertinent, and resonates with us as readers a lot more. It's also very good for personal journeys, something like Bridget Jones. We get to grow alongside her. It's a lot different when it's something like a journey of Katniss's, where it's taking on the government as a single girl. But a personal journey like Bridget's is much better in a first-person single viewpoint. Although there is a downside to first-person single viewpoint narratives. We don't necessarily trust the narrator. For example, in The Great Gatsby, we see everything through Nick. Gatsby is built up to be this big, larger-than-life person when he's not necessarily all that. We're disappointed when he's just a floating body at the end of it because we think he's more than he is. But that's who he's been built up by Nick, not actually what he is. Which in my opinion is a bit of a pathetic man. I have my own feelings on Great Gatsby. It's the 1920s, not the Dark Ages. Ringer, you've got a phone. If you really want the girl, call. Or go across the river. You don't need to shine a big symbolic green light. I don't care. But also she's married. And if she's married, that should be your warning sign to back off. Seeing the world from a single viewpoint can also limit the experience. If it is a large-scale event, zooming out every now and again to see how it's affecting other people can also be really beneficial to the storytelling. For example, if it's something like the Hunger Games, zooming out and seeing how it affects children in other districts, like the career tributes in districts 1 to 4, I would like to see something that affects them and how it works in their minds and how they feel about the games compared to the poorer districts. In summary, personal journeys and scaling down large-scale events to the intimate, first-person single viewpoint is very good. On the negative, it does slightly eschew our opinions and trustworthiness of the narrator because we only see what they see. Therefore, characters are represented how they see them, events are represented how they see them. It could be slightly askew. That brings us to first-person multiple viewpoint. I love a multiple viewpoint narration where you skip from different character to character, but it's still first person because each chapter is them speaking, but it's multiple viewpoint, so we can see how it affects other people. So the pros of this is that we can see how events affect other people. We can go from person to person, cross class boundaries, racial boundaries, sexual boundaries, sexuality boundaries, gender boundaries, and it's very interesting to see how different things affect different people like that in a multiple person viewpoint. I love multiple person viewpoint narratives. I love them. I think they're very good. New information can be released earlier that the other characters may not know about. For example, one of the characters may have a secret that they discuss in one of their chapters, and it's not revealed to the other characters later on. It helps build a lot of tension, and it helps bring that climax to an even bigger boom 2/3 of the way through your novel. We can also find out personal and private motivations for being for and against something. Not everybody is going to agree on something 100% of the time, but if we can see why two people clash in such a way, it can be less frustrating for the reader. Also create a little bit more tension because we know why the two sides are so passionate about why they're fighting, and we can empathise a little bit. Like when we can empathise with the villain a little bit more because we know where they're coming from. It also avoids the unreliable narrator. We still get that intimacy with your characters, but because it's told through multiple viewpoints, we lose that kind of this is how I see the world, and we understand that things might be a little bit misrepresented if it's just through one person's eyes. The cons, it needs a lot of work. It's sometimes hard to follow if it's not done properly. You need to have an individual timeline for each of your characters so you can dip in and out and understand where those timelines relate to one another so you're not getting all muddled along the way. In summary, it's a good way to see a variety of people reacting and interacting with each other, but it's very hard to do. So if you're going to do something like that, then you really need to research and look into what you're doing. It's a lot more planning than a single viewpoint. Second-person narratives are the rarest and the most peculiar form because the reader themselves becomes the main character of the story. They are spoken directly to. It's you. You are the main person. You walk down the hallway. You open the door. You get killed by a grizzly bear. It all on you. R.L. Stine's Goosebumps series is second person, and that is expertly done. It works particularly well with horror and thriller genres because the reader gets engrossed and they are the character. There's no escape for them. They are in the story. They can't just close it and have it go away. It's them. Pros is that it works well in horror and thriller and gothic genres. You can terrify the reader a lot more by having them enthralled in your story. They are in it. They cannot escape until you tell them how it ends for them. Includes the reader. They feel more of a connection to your story if they are the main character. You can also have it work with fantasy novels as well. If you have young children who have always wanted to fly or be invisible or be little superheroes, you can have that. They open the book and they are the main character. They get to run their own story. There's no, oh, I want to be this person when I grow up stuff. It's, I want to be myself because I have all of these superpowers. I've read it. It's been told to me. I'm invincible. It really helps with an imagination, especially a child's. So really good for escapism for adults as well. Like we all want to get out of it every now and again. Just look at fan fiction. Fan fiction is the ultimate adult's escape. And it's all in second person. Cons. It is quite a hard style to work with because sometimes it is difficult to grasp. When I first read a Goosebumps novel, I felt it really hard to connect with the story because I was being told I was the main character, and that's not something I'm used to. In terms of a working genre, it is quite limiting. There are only certain things you can do, although that might be a positive because it's only been done in certain limited genres. Something new might come along in a romance genre or magical realism that hasn't been done yet. Because it's rarely been touched, there's more of a chance of what you're doing being original. Third person are also more common and a lot more realistic. There is an omniscient, aimless, faceless narrator that looks into the story, knows everything, knows how everyone's feeling, knows what everyone's doing at any one time, and knows exactly what's going to happen next, and they are recalling the story to you. We never find out who they are. It's almost like God is talking. So for the pros, we get to see a wider range of characters. For example, in Harry Potter, we don't just see what Harry's up to, we nip off and see what that rascal Voldemort's up to every now and again. Like at the beginning of the Goblet of Fire. Fun stuff. We can go anywhere with a third person. It's better when you're writing about children. For an adult to write in a child's voice is quite difficult because we've not been there for such a long time. If you're doing a third person narrative on what that child is doing, you can see them scrunch their face up and stamp their feet like you're watching your own child misbehave in your house. You can get that reaction a little bit better because we're used to watching the child's behaviours rather than being in that mindset. We haven't been there for a long time. So something like The Secret Garden, when you're writing the magical lifestyle of a young child, hard to get inside that mindset. So you might want to think about being a third person, watching them enjoying it, like when you take your baby to Disneyland and you just watch them run. That's the kind of magic you want to create, but it's hard to fit in that mindset yourself because you're so distant from it. The cons of third person is that that personal relationship with the characters is lost. You don't get their inner monologue, you don't get how they feel, you don't get any of that kind of stuff because it's slightly distant. It has to be to cover the amount of base that a third person narrative covers, but you still lose that personal aspect. When deciding your point of view, there are pros and cons to each one, so choose the one that's best suited to your narrative and what you want the reader to feel. When you're writing something, it's all about getting a connection and an emotional response from the person you are connecting with, i.e. the reader. When creating art, you want a response, even if that response is nothing, still a response. Choose the thing that's going to best suit what you're putting forward, and that's how you choose your narrative voice. See you next time.